What happens when a CEO trades his corner office for a shipping label printer and a pair of steel-toed boots? Isaac Tiller stood in front of the dusty back entrance of Store 11, a mid-sized warehouse in the Western District. There were 19 locations total. His father had built them from scratch, starting with a single storefront 42 years ago. Isaac inherited the company 5 years ago after his father passed, and while operations had grown, something had been gnawing at him lately. The numbers looked fine on paper, but customer feedback was slipping. Product returns were up. He'd heard reports of delays, broken items, and tension among ground staff. The responses from the warehouse managers were short-staffed, shipping delays, normal wear and tear. But Isaac didn't want filtered answers anymore. He shaved his beard, dyed his hair darker, wore thick glasses, and threw on a neon vest with a fake name tag, Ian. He applied as a temp through a third-party agency they'd recently partnered with. No one had seen him in person at this location before. He rarely visited warehouses directly. That was by design. He wanted to see the truth. Store 11 was known for moving the most volume, but it also had the highest return rate. He walked in and was greeted by a woman at a folding desk near the loading dock. "You the new temp?" she asked without looking up.
"Yeah. Ian Thomas," he said.
"You'll be with shipping. Go find Ron." Bald guy with a clipboard. The warehouse was loud and hot. Pallets stacked to the ceiling. Conveyor belts rattled. Forklifts beeped. Isaac found Ron near the back, barking something at one of the younger staff. "You're late," Ron said when he spotted him. "It's 8:01, Isaac replied. Ron stared. "And we start at 8 o'clock. Let's go." Ron didn't ask for ID. The staffing agency had already cleared him. Isaac followed him toward the shipping area, where boxes were flying down the line at a dizzying pace. "You tape, you stack, you scan. That's it. Don't talk too much." "Got it. Got it." Isaac got to work. The pace was brutal. There was barely time to breathe before another box came down. He struggled at first, taping crooked, scanning slow. The guy next to him, a skinny kid with a ponytail, noticed and leaned over. "Hey, press harder on the tape gun. You're not sealing the edges." "Thanks, man."
"I'm Ian."
"Colby." First week's the worst. After that, your brain just stops fighting it. They worked side by side for hours. Around 10, Isaac saw a box come down that was clearly crushed on one side.
He paused.
"Should I pull this?" he asked. Ron, who had just walked past, snapped. "Don't worry about it. Ship it." "But I said ship it." Colby shot Isaac a look but didn't say anything. Later, during their 10-minute break, Isaac pulled Colby aside behind a stack of pallets. "That box was trashed. Is that normal?" Colby hesitated.
"Yeah.
Happens a lot. Ron says not to report it unless it's leaking or totally destroyed." "What about damaged items inside?" "Not our problem, I guess." Isaac frowned. "Isn't there a form or something?" "There was. But Ron said we're wasting too much time filling them out. Said the company's losing money on false breakage claims." Isaac felt his stomach turn. That didn't sound like a policy he ever approved. Back on the floor, he saw another worker, a woman in her 40s named Naomi, carefully reboxing an item with cracked glass. She moved slow, methodical, checking the label, scribbling something in a small notebook. After Ron walked by, she whispered to Isaac, "I log the damages myself. I've been doing this 20 years. I know what happens when you ignore this stuff." Isaac nodded slowly. "Has anyone ever said anything?" "I brought it up once. Got pulled off days for a week. Said they were rebalancing shifts. After that, I kept my head down." That night, Isaac went back to his car and sat behind the wheel for 10 minutes before starting it. He couldn't stop thinking about the broken box, about Naomi, about Ron's face when he barked at him. He'd built this company, his father trusted him to keep it strong. But was he letting it rot from the inside? He came back every day that week. Same routine. More crushed boxes. More shipments pushed through. More corners cut. And every time he asked about it, Ron gave the same answer. Don't worry about it. But Isaac was worried. Very worried. By the fourth day, Isaac's hands were raw. The skin between his thumb and index finger had started to split from yanking tape across boxes. His shoulders ached from repetitive lifting, and the back of his neck burned from the constant overhead lights. But the physical pain wasn't what kept him up at night. It was what he saw happening to the people around him. Mid-morning, he was scanning packages beside Colby when the conveyor belt jammed. A cracked plastic bin had lodged sideways, snarling the flow of boxes. Colby reached to clear it, but Ron appeared before he could finish. If you're not trained on mechanicals, you don't touch it, Ron snapped, yanking the bin free himself. I wasn't messing with the motor. Just clearing the belt, Colby replied, stepping back. Ron leaned close. You screw with my line again, you're out. End of story. Colby didn't respond. He just turned back to the scanner and kept working, lips pressed tight. By lunch, the air had turned sour. Several workers had gathered around the break table, eating silently. No one laughed. No one even checked their phones. The only sound was the hum of the industrial fan in the corner. Isaac sat beside Naomi. She was eating cold rice out of a reusable container, her eyes flicking occasionally toward the warehouse door. Ron always this tense? He asked low. She didn't look at him. He's worried about the audit. Regional's sending someone next week. Wants everything to look clean. Is that why he's pushing so hard? Naomi paused, chewing slowly. He says the company's on his back. That we're lucky to have shifts. But half the crew's been cut since January. Isaac nodded, processing. And the workload?
Same.
Maybe more. But he won't document the backlog, so it doesn't exist on paper. I've brought it up. Doesn't go anywhere. A younger woman across the table, maybe 19, looked up from her sandwich. He told me if I keep asking for help lifting, I'll get reassigned to returns. Said it's less physical for people who can't keep up. Naomi set her fork down. That's Jules. Started 2 weeks ago. Already bruised her wrist. Isaac turned to Jules. You report that? She shook her head. To who? HR's just an email. Ron checks the kiosk before we can even finish typing. That night, Isaac didn't go home. He drove to a quiet lot, parked, and stared at the warehouse from a distance. Lights still flickered inside. A second shift had started, but he knew the conditions hadn't changed. The next morning he arrived early. Earlier than anyone. He stood by the loading dock, watching the sun rise through the high windows. He needed to talk to someone who wasn't afraid to tell the truth. When Colby arrived, Isaac pulled him aside before the shift started.
Hey.
I know this is weird, but I need to ask you something direct. Colby narrowed his eyes. Okay. If you could change one thing about this place, what would it be? Colby blinked. You serious? Completely. He looked toward the line. It's not just one thing. It's the way we're treated. Like we're disposable. Like the second we get hurt or speak up, we're gone. Isaac kept his voice even. You ever think about quitting? Almost every day. But I need the money. My brother's tuition, rent. I can't just walk out. Isaac nodded, then asked, what about the damage reports? You ever log them? Colby hesitated. I tried. Ron erased them. Said it makes his numbers look bad. Told me to focus on my tasks, not play quality inspector. Isaac sighed. Thanks for being honest. Colby looked at him. Why do you care, man? You're just a temp. I've worked places like this before. Isaac looked him in the eye. Doesn't mean you stop caring. That afternoon, a pallet collapsed near the sorting zone. The straps had been frayed for days, and when the final box was added, the whole thing shifted and came down hard. No one was hurt, but the crash rang through the building like a gunshot. Ron stormed over, red-faced. Who loaded that? He shouted. Everyone froze. The loader, a man named Luis, stepped forward. I did. But those straps were… I don't care. You check them. Every time. You just cost us half a shift. Luis tried again. The straps were already on it when I… You're suspended. Clock out now. Luis stood still. You serious? Ron tapped the tablet in his hand.
Now.
Isaac watched Luis walk off, wiping his hands on his shirt, head low. No investigation. No review. Just gone. At the end of the day, Isaac pulled Naomi aside. What happened with Luis, is that normal? She looked away. If something breaks, someone takes the fall. Doesn't matter who. Ron just needs someone to point at. Makes his reports look clean. Isaac clenched his jaw. Then he said, what would you do if you were running this place? Naomi gave him a long look. First thing, idolisten. Second, I'd stop pretending the numbers tell the whole story. The following morning, Isaac was assigned to returns. No explanation. Just a clipboard with new duties. He suspected Ron had moved him deliberately, either to isolate him or shut him out. The returns section was tucked away behind tall shelves. The lighting was dimmer. The air smelled faintly of cardboard and dust. Boxes marked damaged were stacked in uneven piles. A woman named Trina managed the station. She wore thick gloves and kept her sleeves rolled high, revealing old burns along her forearm. You knew?
Yeah.
Ian.
Alright, Ian.
We sort by code. A, B, or C. A means customer damaged. B is warehouse. C is unknown. You log it, photograph it, and stack it by zone. Easy. Isaac nodded. And if it's clearly our fault, mark it B. But keep it quiet. Ron doesn't like when too many BS show up. Isaac logged 33 items that day. Of them, 17 were visibly crushed or cracked, clearly mishandled before ever leaving the building. Every time he marked one as B, Trina shot him a glance. You sure you want to do that? It's accurate. She shrugged. Your call. Just don't be surprised if you're back on loading tomorrow. The last straw came 2 days later. Jules was lifting a heavy box off the line, and her wrist gave out. She dropped it hard, and it shattered a set of ceramic dishes. Ron was there in seconds. What the hell was that? Jules cradled her wrist. It's my hand. I told you it wasn't. You just cost us $100. You'll be docked. She needs a medic, Isaac said sharply. Ron turned to him. You don't speak unless I ask you to. Isaac stepped forward. She's injured. You're required to report that. Ron crossed his arms. You want to be next? You've been asking too many questions since day one. Isaac took a slow breath. Then he reached into his vest, pulled out his ID badge, and held it out. Ron, my name is Isaac Tiller. I'm the CEO of this company. Silence fell like a dropped pallet. For a moment, no one moved. Ron's mouth opened, then closed. His face went pale. Isaac turned to Jules. You're going to medical.
Now.
He faced the room. Everyone, stop what you're doing. I want the floor cleared. Right now. No one questioned him. As Ron stammered something about confusion, miscommunication, Isaac cut him off. You've falsified damage records. Suspended staff, without investigation. Ignored injuries. You're done here. Ron opened his mouth again, but Isaac raised a hand. Security will walk you out. Do not speak to anyone else. He turned to Naomi. Can you gather the team in the break area? She nodded once, eyes wide. As Ron was escorted out, Isaac stood in the middle of the shipping room, surrounded by stunned faces. He looked each of them in the eye. What came next had to matter more than anything he'd done before. The break room wasn't built to hold 20 people, but that's how many Isaac counted standing around the small plastic table and vending machines. No one spoke at first. Some still had gloves on. A few leaned against the wall, like they weren't sure whether to stay or leave. Naomi stood near the door, arms folded, watching him. Colby came in last, still wiping his hands on a towel. The energy in the room hovered between disbelief and caution. Isaac stepped forward, voice steady. I want to be clear about something. What happened on the floor today wasn't an isolated incident. I've been here for almost a week, under a different name, trying to understand what's happening inside this location because I wasn't getting the truth any other way. No one interrupted. He scanned the faces tired, skeptical, a few with eyes narrowed. I saw broken systems being ignored. I saw people pushed past the edge, and I saw someone get hurt while management looked the other way. That ends now. Naomi spoke first. So, what happens next? Isaac nodded. There will be changes, starting today. I'm assigning an interim floor manager from outside this district. Someone with no ties here. They'll be here by morning. A man near the back with a shaved head raised a hand. And Ron. Terminated. With cause. Isaac said simply. His decisions put this team at risk and compromise the integrity of our product. That's not something we overlook. The man gave a small nod and folded his arms again. I also want to hear from you, Isaac continued. There's a lot I didn't see. I want to know what else you've been dealing with. Equipment failures, schedule gaps, anything that's affecting your work. Jules gently raised her hand, still holding her wrist. Isaac pointed to her. Go ahead. I asked for help lifting heavier boxes because of my wrist. I didn't get it. Instead, I got told to toughen up. That's not a policy, right? It's not, Isaac said. You'll be seen by a company doctor today. And we'll evaluate your job assignment after recovery. You won't be penalized for reporting an injury. A woman near the sink cleared her throat. We've been told to take breaks at weird times, sometimes after 2 hours, sometimes not until 4. Depends on the load. Doesn't feel safe. Isaac nodded. That's not in line with our scheduling standards. I'll review the scan logs to confirm actual break times. We'll fix it. Another voice from behind the vending machine. We've been short on tape guns and gloves for weeks. Ron said supply orders were backed up, but I saw unopened boxes in the storage cage yesterday. Isaac let that sink in. If those supplies are here and weren't distributed, that's negligence. We'll inventory the cage this afternoon and make everything available. For the first time, a few people exchanged glances. Colby spoke next, quieter than the others. Are you going to forget about this place again, once you leave? Isaac didn't answer right away. He looked at the floor, then back at the group.
No.
I can't. I made that mistake once. I won't make it again. He turned to Naomi. Can you stay back a few minutes? She nodded. The crowd began to thin. Some still looked doubtful, but most just looked relieved to be heard. Colby gave Isaac a brief nod before heading for the floor. Jules walked with one of the older workers, cradling her wrist. Once the room was nearly empty, Naomi stepped forward. You really didn't know how bad it was? I knew something was wrong, he said. But not the extent, not the culture. She crossed her arms. And now I want your help. You've got experience. People trust you. I want you to act as liaison for the next 60 days, help the new manager understand the real issues. Report directly to me. I'm not a manager. I'm not asking you to be. I'm asking you to tell the truth. You already do that. She considered for a moment, then said, I'll do it. But only if I can speak freely. You have my word. Later that afternoon, the interim manager arrived. Her name was Lacey Tran, a logistics veteran from a different region. She wore a plain blue shirt and steel-toed boots, and she carried a clipboard already filled with notes. Isaac met her at the dock. You'll have full access. Start with the returns logs. That's where the most inconsistencies are. And I want a full staff-level skills assessment by the end of the week. Understood, she said, already scanning the floor with practiced eyes. Who's my point on site?
Naomi.
You'll like her. As Lacey headed toward the sorting zone, Isaac walked to the small storage cage tucked behind the equipment lockers. It was locked, but the key was still attached to Ron's old clipboard. Inside, shelves were stacked with unopened boxes, gloves, safety vests, new tape guns, even fresh barcode scanners. He opened a box and pulled out a sealed pair of gloves. He turned as Colby walked by, holding a clipboard of his own. "These what you needed?" Colby paused.
Yeah.
"Been using a torn pair for over a week." Isaac tossed them to him. "Take what you need, and let the others know." As the warehouse moved through the rest of its shift, Isaac stayed. He walked the floor, watched the line, helped rebox a set of damaged cookware, and sat with Jules while she filled out her injury report, this time with someone from HR actually present. When the day ended, he stood near the exit and watched the team clock out. No one said much, but a few gave him small nods. Naomi passed by and looked at him once, then kept walking. He stayed until the lights dimmed and the building fell quiet. The next morning he was back before sunrise. Not as Ian. Not as a temp. But not as a distant executive either. He was there to rebuild from the ground up. And this time he was listening. 3 weeks later, Isaac returned to Store 11 not in disguise, not as a visitor, but as a leader determined to finish what he had started. The warehouse looked nearly the same from the outside, but inside, the tone had shifted. The tension that once hung in the air like static had thinned. No one was cheerful, but they moved with more steadiness. People spoke in full sentences again. There were fewer glances over shoulders. He walked through the main gate without ceremony, wearing a plain jacket over his shirt. Jules was at the scanning table with a wrist brace and a new assignment monitoring outbound inventory accuracy. She caught his eye briefly, nodded once, then returned to her work. Lacey met him near the returns section. Her clipboard was filled with tightly written notes, and her expression was unreadable. "I've completed the 90-day plan draft," she said. "We'll need approval for 2 part-time hires and a rotating shift lead structure." Isaac motioned for her to walk with him. "Let's go through it in the conference room." They passed Naomi near the intake area. She was reviewing a stack of packing slips next to a younger worker and pointing out something on the screen in front of them. She didn't break focus when Isaac walked by, and that was exactly what he wanted. This place was starting to function without fear. That was the goal. In the conference room, Lacey laid out the printed schedule, budget adjustments, and a new incident tracking system. She tapped the corner of the paper. "This is the most sensitive part. We've logged 273 items in the past 10 days as warehouse origin damage. That's 10 times what was being reported before. It won't look good in quarterly reviews." "I'm not worried about appearances," Isaac said. "We'll absorb the cost. We're not shipping broken product anymore." She nodded once. "I'll finalize the vendor feedback forms this week. We've traced some of the breakage to poor packaging upstream." He leaned back slightly.
Good.
"I want every step of the chain accountable, not just the last pair of hands." Later that afternoon, he called a closed-door meeting with HR, legal, and the regional operations manager. The agenda was direct: issue final evaluations on the previous warehouse supervisor's conduct, review his handling of employee injuries, and flag any related complaints that had gone unaddressed. The HR director answered plainly. "We've completed the investigation." Multiple complaints were either closed preemptively or never escalated. 2 employees reported retaliatory scheduling. 1 worker had been flagged for performance after asking for ergonomic adjustments. Isaac's voice stayed calm. "Have those employees been followed up with?" "They've been contacted. 1 accepted a transfer. The other is staying, now under new supervision." And Ron. His termination was finalized last week. "We've updated our internal policy to require third-party review for any future suspensions." Isaac didn't thank them.
He expected it done right.
After the meeting, he returned to the floor. The pace had steadied, but the work was still demanding. He noticed Luis near the loading dock, rechecking a pallet with two others. There was a new checklist taped to the wall beside them, laminated and printed in bold text. Final load verification, safety first. Isaac stepped over. Looks good, he said, nodding toward the stack. Luis turned, startled for a moment. We've started double-checking strap tension. That was Naomi's idea. Smart, Isaac replied. You good here? Better than before. We've got enough hands now to rotate every 3 hours. Less fatigue. Fewer mistakes. Isaac glanced at the roster posted by the door. It showed 2 new hires listed as probationary load techs. The numbers still ran tight, but the balance was improving. He kept walking past the freshly stocked supply cage, where new gloves and tape guns were now checked out and logged, past the returns area, where Trina was training a younger staff member on photo documentation, past the main belt, where Colby was now monitoring scan data and flagging anomalies for review. Everything was still hard. But it was no longer ignored. At the end of the shift, Isaac gathered the team in the break room not for a lecture, not for a statement, but to close the loop. The same space where he had first revealed who he was now held the same faces, but with more weight behind their expressions. Naomi stood nearest to him, arms no longer folded, but hands by her sides. I won't take much of your time, Isaac began. I just wanted to say one thing today. This warehouse is not fixed. It's not perfect, but it's honest now. And that's the foundation we build on. He scanned the room. A few nodded. Some just listened. You all kept this operation running while dealing with decisions that didn't reflect our values. That's not something I can fix in a single visit. That's something I can only fix by staying involved.
So you'll see more of me.
You'll see more of leadership. And you'll have more say. Colby raised a hand slightly. You really going to keep checking up on us? Isaac smiled faintly, not out of show, but because the question was the right one. I don't need to check up on you, he said. I need to work with you. The room stayed quiet for a beat longer. Then Jules turned to Naomi and said something too quietly to hear. Naomi nodded once, then looked back at Isaac.
We'll hold you to that, she said.
Good, Isaac replied. As people began to file out, Isaac stayed behind briefly, looking around the room. The old vending machine was still there. The tile still had the same crack near the coffee pot. But the silence wasn't heavy anymore. Outside, the sun was dipping low behind the building. He stood by his car for a moment, watching as the last few workers headed to the bus stop. No one rushed. No one looked over their shoulder. He didn't need fanfare. He didn't need applause. He needed a company that worked from the top, through the floor, to every customer that opened a box and found exactly what they ordered, intact and on time. And now, for the first time in far too long, he believed they were on their way there.